Rock has always pushed boundaries, but some songs went too far. Shocking, terrifying, and downright unsettling. From horror and psychological terror to dystopian dread and meditations on death. These tracks faced controversy, were resisted by radio programmers, and left audiences shaken. Here are 10 rock songs that scared, shocked, and stirred controversy. Stay tuned for a bonus track that takes punk rock to its darkest, most menacing extremes.
21st century schizoid man.
Number 10. Known for their theatrical horror shows and a frontman who would later become synonymous with shock rock itself. Alice Cooper, Dead Babies, 1971. Alice Cooper's Dead Babies faced significant censorship across American radio for its disturbing subject matter and graphic imagery. The song's narrative about child mortality and neglect was considered too dark for public consumption, even by the standards of early 1970s rock. Many radio programmers refused to air the track during daytime hours, citing its inappropriate content and potential to disturb listeners. The song's clinical, almost detached musical arrangement made its subject matter even more unsettling. Cooper delivered the lyrics with an eerie calm that suggested genuine psychological disturbance. Religious groups condemned the song as promoting violence against children, while parent organizations launched campaigns to have Cooper's entire catalog removed from record stores. Several major retail chains refused to stock the album containing the track. The controversy deepened when Cooper began performing the song live with elaborate stage props, including what appeared to be infant dolls. Concert venues across the Midwest restricted these performances, with some cities threatening to revoke the band's permits if they included the song in their set list. What made the censorship so intense was the song's musical sophistication. This wasn't crude shock rock, but a carefully crafted piece that made its dark themes even more disturbing through artistic presentation. Number 9. Picture a performer whose wild theatrics and bone-chilling vocals created something that seemed less like entertainment and more like a genuine supernatural encounter. Screaming Jay Hawkins, I Put a Spell on You, 1956.
I put a spell on you.
Screaming Jay Hawkins' most famous track was banned by numerous radio stations across America for its disturbing blend of voodoo imagery and sexually suggestive content. What made the song extremely unsettling wasn't just the lyrics, it was Hawkins' unhinged vocal performance that sounded possessed. The song emerged from a recording session that went completely off the rails. Hawkins and his band had been drinking heavily, and what was supposed to be a conventional ballad transformed into something far more sinister. His growling, screaming vocals and the song's hypnotic rhythm created an atmosphere that many listeners found frightening. Radio programmers were disturbed by the song's apparent references to witchcraft and supernatural powers. The combination of Hawkins' demonic-sounding vocals and lyrics about casting spells made many stations uncomfortable, especially in the conservative South, where such themes were considered blasphemous. Several major radio networks banned the track entirely, citing its inappropriate content and potential to disturb religious listeners. The song's sexual undertones, combined with its occult imagery, made it doubly controversial for 1950s America. Number 8. Think of a British band whose name alone struck fear into the hearts of parents, whose music was so heavy and ominous that it spawned an entirely new genre of darkness. Black Sabbath, War Pigs, 1970. Originally titled Fa Pulgas, after the witches' Sabbath, this anti-war anthem faced censorship across multiple countries for its graphic depictions of warfare and its condemnation of political leaders as war criminals. The song's dark imagery and crushing musical weight made it challenging for mainstream radio. The track's opening, with its air raid siren guitar effects and thunderous rhythm, created a consuming feeling of menace that radio programmers found disturbing. The lyrics' graphic descriptions of battlefield carnage and political corruption were deemed too explicit for daytime broadcast. Religious groups condemned the song's apparent satanic imagery, particularly the references to witches and black masses. Several European countries restricted the track's airplay, viewing it as both blasphemous and politically subversive. American radio stations heavily edited the song, removing entire verses that described politicians as war pigs and depicted graphic battlefield scenes. Some stations avoided it during peak hours, citing listener complaints about its depressing and evil content. The song's 8-minute length and relentlessly dark tone made it unsuitable for standard commercial radio formats. Its influence on heavy metal was immediate and lasting, but its commercial success was hampered by widespread censorship that limited its airplay during its initial release. Number 7. Imagine a band from New York whose art rock pretensions masked a deeply disturbing exploration of urban decay and human degradation. The Velvet Underground, Heroin, 1967.
Wish that I was born 1,000 years ago.
Lou Reed's unflinching portrayal of drug addiction was banned by virtually every major radio station in America. Heroin wasn't just about drugs, it was a 7-minute descent into hell that made addiction sound both terrifying and seductive. The song's structure mirrored the drug experience itself, building from quiet introspection to frenzied chaos as John Cale's viola screeched, and Sterling Morrison's guitar feedback set the stage for a complete psychological breakdown. Radio programmers found the track's realistic portrayal of addiction too dangerous for broadcast. The BBC banned the song immediately upon its UK release, citing its promotion of illegal drug use. American stations followed suit, with many refusing to play any Velvet Underground material due to the band's association with Andy Warhol's factory scene and the underground drug culture.
Away from the big city.
What made the censorship significant was the song's artistic merit. This wasn't exploitation, but genuine art dealing with serious social issues. However, its unflinching realism made it too intense for commercial radio, which preferred sanitized versions of rebellion. The track's influence on alternative rock was enormous, but its commercial impact was severely limited by the widespread ban that kept it underground for decades. Even today, many classic rock stations avoid the song due to its disturbing content and unconventional structure.
Putting everybody else down, and all the dead bodies piled up in.
Number 6. Picture a German band whose electronic experiments created something that sounded less like music than like a transmission from a dystopian future. Kraftwerk, Radioactivity, 1975. While Kraftwerk was primarily electronic, their influence on rock was undeniable, and Radioactivity faced restrictions across multiple countries for its chilling portrayal of nuclear disaster. The song's cold, mechanical delivery made its apocalyptic theme even more disturbing. The track's minimalist lyrics, simply repeating radioactivity over an ominous electronic pulse, conjured a vision of technological dread that many radio programmers found too unsettling for regular broadcast. The song's release during the height of Cold War nuclear anxiety made it greatly controversial. Several European radio networks avoided the track, viewing it as potentially harmful to public morale during a period of nuclear tension. American stations largely steered clear due to its depressing content and unconventional electronic sound that didn't fit standard rock formats. Radio programmers were mostly concerned about the song's timing, as it coincided with growing anti-nuclear sentiment and fears about atomic warfare. The track's mechanical, emotionless delivery made its nuclear themes seem even more ominous and prophetic. The song's influence on both electronic music and industrial rock was enormous, but its commercial success was limited by widespread avoidance from mainstream radio. Its prophetic vision of nuclear disaster became even more relevant after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl. Number 5. Consider a British band whose guitarist's mental breakdown became the stuff of legend, creating music that seemed to predict his own tragic descent into madness. Pink Floyd, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, 1968. This instrumental nightmare faced restrictions from radio stations for its terrifying climax. Roger Waters' blood-curdling scream that erupted from nowhere in the song's quiet middle section. The track's psychological horror proved too intense for standard broadcast. The song built slowly from gentle acoustic guitar and soft vocals to an explosive crescendo of screaming and chaotic instrumentation. Radio programmers found Waters' primal scream disturbing, with some reporting that it caused listeners to call in complaints or change stations immediately. Several European radio networks restricted the track's airplay after receiving complaints that it was psychologically harmful to listeners. The song's unpredictable structure, with its sudden shift from calm to terror, made it unsuitable for commercial radio formats that required predictable content. Concert performances of the song became legendary for their intensity, with Waters' scream often causing strong audience reactions. The track's influence on progressive rock was significant, but its commercial success was limited by restrictions that kept it off mainstream radio during peak hours. The song's reputation as one of rock's scariest pieces was cemented by the widespread unease it generated among both programmers and listeners who found its psychological intensity too disturbing for regular airplay. Number 4. Think of a band whose very name suggested danger, whose music was so brutal and uncompromising that it helped define an entirely new level of musical aggression. Venom, Black Metal, 1982. This British trio's title track from their second album faced restrictions in multiple countries for its satanic imagery and menacing sound. Black metal wasn't just heavy, it was evil, creating a template for extreme metal that was too intense for mainstream consumption. The song's primitive production and Kronos' demonic vocals created an atmosphere of genuine malevolence that radio programmers found disturbing. Religious groups condemned the track as promoting devil worship, while several radio networks avoided it entirely. The track's influence on extreme metal was immediate and lasting. It literally gave the black metal genre its name. However, its commercial success was limited by widespread avoidance from mainstream radio that kept it underground throughout the 1980s. Concert venues began requiring additional security when Venom performed, concerned that the band's satanic imagery might create problems. Some promoters avoided booking the band entirely, viewing their extreme image as potentially problematic for venue safety and public relations. The song's legacy lies in its creation of an entirely new subgenre of metal, though its path to recognition was significantly hampered by the restrictions and avoidance it faced from mainstream outlets during its initial release period. Number 3. Envision a band whose lead singer's personal demons created music so dark and disturbing that it seemed to channel genuine evil. Danzig, Mother, 1988.
Tell your children not to hear my words, what they mean, what they say, Mother.
While released in 1988, Glenn Danzig's ominous anthem faced censorship from numerous radio stations for its dark imagery and the singer's haunting delivery. The song's combination of heavy metal and horror music atmosphere proved too intense for standard mainstream radio programming. The track's lyrics about maternal authority and rebellion were delivered with such sinister intensity that many programmers found it disturbing. Danzig's operatic vocals and the song's crushing rhythmic section evoked a mood of impending doom that made radio executives uncomfortable. Religious groups condemned the song's apparent anti-family message, while parent organizations launched campaigns to have it restricted from daytime radio playlists. Several major markets limited the track's airplay to late-night hours only, citing its inappropriate content and disturbing imagery. The song's music video, featuring the band performing in a dark, gothic setting, was heavily censored by MTV for being too frightening for younger viewers. The combination of Danzig's imposing physical presence and the song's ominous atmosphere created something so unsettling it required content warnings. Despite facing these restrictions, the song eventually became a cult classic, though its path to recognition was significantly hampered by the censorship it faced during its initial release period. Number 2. Consider a band whose exploration of mental illness and psychological breakdown created music so disturbing that it seemed to document actual madness. King Crimson, 21st Century Schizoid Man, 1969.
Seed, blind man's greed, poets starving, children bleed.
This progressive rock masterpiece faced restrictions from radio stations for its disturbing portrayal of mental illness and its menacing musical arrangement. The song's combination of jazz rock complexity and psychological horror proved too intense for standard commercial radio formats. The track's lyrics painted a picture of complete mental breakdown, while Robert Fripp's guitar work and the band's complex rhythms created an atmosphere of genuine psychological disturbance. Radio programmers found the song's realistic portrayal of mental illness too disturbing for regular daytime broadcast. The song's unconventional structure, with its sudden tempo changes and dissonant harmonies, made it unsuitable for commercial radio formats that preferred predictable song structures.
Barbed wire, politicians in on point.
Its influence on progressive rock was enormous, but its commercial success was limited by widespread reluctance to program it during peak listening hours. Several stations avoided the track entirely during daytime programming, viewing its portrayal of mental illness as potentially harmful to listeners. The song's reputation as one of rock's most disturbing pieces was cemented by the unease it generated among both programmers and audiences. The track's complex musical arrangement and disturbing lyrical content made it a favorite among serious rock fans, but its challenging nature kept it largely confined to late-night and underground radio programming throughout the 1970s.
Schizoid man.
Number 1. This band's name suggested mysterious rituals, and their music wrapped dark themes in beautiful melodies, creating songs that sounded like hymns from another world. Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper, 1976. While not explicitly banned, this haunting meditation on death was heavily censored and edited by radio stations uncomfortable with its suicide themes and occult imagery. The song's beautiful melody masked deeply disturbing content about embracing death, making it one of rock's most deceptively dark anthems. Radio programmers were disturbed by the song's romanticization of death and its apparent encouragement of suicide pacts. The lyrics, "Romeo and Juliet are together in eternity," were interpreted as promoting suicide as a romantic solution to life's problems. Several stations edited out entire verses dealing with death and dying. Religious groups condemned the song's apparent celebration of death over life, viewing it as spiritually dangerous. The band's name itself, Blue Oyster Cult, suggested occult connections that made the song's death themes even more troubling to conservative listeners. Despite its commercial success, many stations played heavily edited versions that removed the most explicit references to death and dying. The song's influence on gothic rock and metal was enormous, but its full lyrical content remained too controversial for unrestricted airplay throughout the late 1970s and early 1980s. Bonus track. This band took punk rock and infused it with B-movie horror imagery, creating music that sounded like it was recorded in a haunted graveyard. Misfits, Die Die My Darling, 1984. The Misfits' horror punk anthem faced significant resistance from radio programmers due to its graphic lyrical content and disturbing imagery. While not officially banned, the song's violent themes and Glenn Danzig's menacing delivery made it too intense for most mainstream radio formats. The track's repetitive chorus and graphic references to death and violence produced an effect that many programmers found unsuitable for broadcast. Radio stations that did consider playing it often restricted it to late-night hours or avoided it entirely, citing concerns about its potentially disturbing effects on listeners. The song's horror movie aesthetic, combined with the band's skull-faced imagery, reinforced its reputation as petrifying rather than typical rock rebellion. Concert venues sometimes expressed concerns about the band's violent imagery and the potential for their performances to incite aggressive behavior among audiences. Religious groups condemned the song's apparent celebration of violence and death, viewing it as spiritually harmful. The song's influence on horror punk and gothic rock was significant, but its commercial success was limited by the widespread resistance it faced from mainstream outlets who found its content too extreme for regular airplay. These tracks show that rock can still shock, disturb, and push boundaries, just as it did when authorities tried to silence it. Which of these controversial songs do you think was the darkest? Let us know in the comments below.